Today, we are going to talk about change. This month, I decided that this month is going to be about change. And as Brandon Burchard said it, how to deal with change and how to manage chaos. Let's get a little bit deeper into it. Just go read books, whatever it is, in order to figure out how to deal with it. And I was like, oh my God, that's cool. I'm going to make this month, the month of May, is going to be dedicated to change. I didn't say chaos, I said change. But unfortunately, with change comes chaos too. Now, one of the reasons that I've started late is that some chaos turned up in my life. So last year, I helped someone out, and we were supposed to have a normal kind of contract. He just basically went totally haywire. Everybody could see I was helping him. He couldn't see it. It happens with some people. And he said, I'm not going to sign anything. So I already had helped him for so many hours. And he said, no, I'm not going to help you. Okay, well, nice, thank you. So I reached out to the one so the local municipality, he was in charge of it all. And I said, I've got a problem. First of all, I don't want to work with him anymore because if he doesn't trust me, it's done. I said, and second of all, I've put in a lot of hours. So then she said, well, have you heard about this system? So I looked up that system and said, well, now I have. I looked what the requirements were. Okay, this, that, and the other. I can do that. So he said, okay, well, then I'll make sure you get paid. So months went by and I said, so what's going on? He said, well, I don't understand. And then at some point, not long ago, she said, well, that system that we've been talking about, that's where you need to go. And believe it or not, but the requirements I needed for the system, they stopped like 2 months ago. The certification I needed was no longer there. And as a result, the code, actually, the professional organization was no longer there. And hence, the code I needed was no longer in the system. And, well, so I cannot get the other system running as I wanted to because I need codes for it. So I was like, okay, what am I going to do? So first I called everyone, no, can't be changed. So I can call the local municipality. I probably might. But in the meanwhile, I was already starting up things, having to do with a certain form of recognition. And I mean, literally identifying who I am. So using passport or other forms of ID, and they're called e-recognition. And so I paid. Well, actually, the invoice still needs to be paid. I paid for it, or at least that's what I'm going to do next week. And then I figured out that I didn't have the codes anymore. So I was like, okay, now what? So I looked online and I saw something else and I was like, okay, well, maybe I should get back to this organization. It's a new organization. It's nearby. It felt good. It still feels good. And then they said, well, we need to have your identifying things and we need to have the diploma of your certification when you became a therapist. And I was like, I have no clue where that thing is. And well, here is the thing. It's not the first time that my diplomas actually got the worst of it. So I remember that at some point when I moved for the first time or something, we lived above a store and the cellar was underneath the store. And guess what? They had plumbing problems, and all my diplomas and a lot of other stuff, they were drenched in water, including my diplomas. Hmm. You know what the insurance company says? Well, everything that's put in a cellar is something you don't need anymore. Well, thank you so much. We were actually waiting to move to a bigger house, which was being built at the time. And that's why stuff was in the cellar. So yesterday I realized I needed the diploma, and nowadays everything has been scanned. It's, ever since I started using Apple, everything is organized. And that means that everything prior to Apple is at a different system. I probably can find it. I'm not sure if I actually scanned the diploma ever. Hopefully I did, but I don't know. And quite honestly, I had not planned on ever using it again. It's nice to be a therapist, but healthcare insurance said, so nice, but we're not going to do anything anymore. We're not going to pay for your clients. So I was pretty much done with it. Change, right? And well, then I read, good people do have those codes. Well, that's a little bit of a problem, right? I don't have the codes anymore since 2 months. And had everything gone the way it should, then first of all, I shouldn't have had to use this system. And second of all, it would have been way before actually that organization would have ended. So I guess the universe is trying to send me a message, or as my coach likes to say it, we send a message ourselves. And I don't know if it's to the universe, but I do believe that we're sending a message somewhere. It could be to ourselves too. And if we just think about our mind and our subconscious mind, so the subconscious mind sort of picks up on all those little clues. So it knows when you stick to something that you said you would do. It also knows when you do not stick to something that you said you would do, but you haven't done. And well, I basically said, I'm done with this. I'm going to go for full-time coaching. I'm going to do it online. And well, so here I am, and all of a sudden I'm being thrown back in the past. So I've been thinking, what's the message? Maybe the message is, I shouldn't be going there. But having said so, I did already spend a lot of money, because the other organization also requires a lot of money. So fingers crossed that the school where I became a therapist actually has my diploma somewhere, or they can print it, or it's somewhere in storage. I don't know. The thing is, I looked up the folder where all my certificates are, especially from the IT, but also when I became sports masseuse and other stuff. Everything was there except for those ones. And likely it's somewhere here, but the moment that I made the transition, when I said I'm no longer going to have people here, instead I'm going to go online fully and work globally. So yes, I do have clients from other countries. I of course go online. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm not where I want to be just yet. So this week, I got training from Brandon Burchard, CHPC training, certified high performance coaching training. And I had a blast. It was my first recertification, which meant that I did it last year in March. And I remember back then that it was sheer chaos on my end. Like, there was so much to read, and the idea is that you read certain things out loud, you give definitions the way you feel things are, and then you go coaching, but you use the sentences to sort of have like startup. So the whole goal is that you also refer back to the previous sessions, and that the important things which are related to that topic of the session are actually being told to the client. So one of the reasons why I wanted to do this was I wanted to know, apparently I did old style coaching, and I was like, what's old style coaching? What does it mean? And I had a discussion with someone else about what is a therapist, what's a coach. Then there's a trainer and there's a mentor. Mentor apparently does it all. He said the therapist is there to listen. I've learned that the therapist actually does not listen. The therapist comes with solutions, and well, the client is subjected to those solutions one way or another. So basically, it's more that the therapist does most of the work. Of course, the client needs to do it too, but there's a lot that the therapist decides needs to be done. And of course, the moment that someone leaves again, that's when they need to pick up the pace themselves until they return. Now, with a coach, we listen. And well, you've got the coach and you've got the counselor. Counselor goes back into the past, sort of like the therapist does too. And the coach looks forward towards the future. Now, one of the things I learned pretty quickly when I wanted to become a coach was the listening aspect, because I was so used to talking as a therapist, and all of a sudden, okay, that's new. Well, I have to say I had a really good mentor, and he pointed it out. I got to understand it. And he really was good at having us listen for the little clues. We would get exercises, be silent, all those things which actually get someone else to talk. I will say this thing. I usually tend to, no, that's not true. I want to say I can listen very well and I can stay silent. I can. And when I think someone is done, that's when I start to talk. Unless, and that's a big unless, I'm like, I need to get this out there and I need to say it. So I've also learned to write things down. Now, usually I can tell when someone is done speaking, but now coaching online with non-native English speakers, they are still thinking about certain things. And even though I see them, I cannot always tell. And then by the time I start to speak, the other one starts to speak too. Now, the good news is over the phone, the same thing happens. My coach starts to talk when I'm still talking. So, and vice versa. So it's not that uncommon when you're not in the same space. Now, getting back to what I want. What I want, and I've wanted that for a long time, is I want a change in corporate life. I want a change in businesses. And I guess that what I want is something that best should start with small businesses, where business owners do not have the money and as a result do not have the staff to do talks. Think about HR people, think about team leaders. It's just, there are just not enough people to actually get someone there who is in charge of all the appointments, well, not the appointments, the agreements, the communication, where to go, get back on, hey, how have you been doing? And well, business owners, and the same actually applies to team leaders and managers, are not very well equipped usually to do those kind of things. And having been in IT for 20 years, I've seen a bunch of team leaders, and every time I would start at a company, it would be so much fun. And then at some point, except for the first company, at some point, management would change, team leaders would change, and haywire. So I learned early on, especially since I was being sent to companies where change would be going on, that team leaders usually become seniors because of their knowledge of the technical stuff, not because they have people skills. And well, nowadays, when we talk about business owners, the same actually applies. They're good at something, they set up a business, they make it thrive, they get team members, and then, oh, we need them to, let's say we need them to listen to me, the boss. And well, if I cannot communicate, so I'm not literally talking about myself right now, but if I cannot communicate, then how do I tell my employees what I want from them? So if they come and go whenever they want, or I tell them to write down the hours, but they don't, how does that work? How can I change that? And I have said multiple times to small business owners, well, get someone once a week, for an hour or so to talk to those people. And also you can do a lot of stuff yourself. Well, the response I would get is that something that happens in big organizations. I've got a little small organization, so it's not going to happen. Now, if we fast forward, one of the things I have been wanting to do for a while now is I want to train managers and business owners. Yeah, those same ones. Yes, exactly. Because I've noticed that a lot of them are not good at communication. By working on them, like say for a week or half a week, preferably a week. So I take them out of their normal environment. I take them to a city, for instance, Chicago, or I have them travel with me through Europe prior to Christmas. By having a bunch of like-minded people who sort of struggle with the same kind of things, which is being small business owners. Here you have a team, but they do not know how to communicate with that team and how to get them aligned with their vision and their goal. So I want to work on those people themselves. I want to coach them to figure out, hey, what is this I'm doing? How do I communicate to others? So a lot of people, especially in IT, they are very analytical and they're very straightforward. And as a result, when you've said something once, then you've said it, so you're not going to say it again. But that's not how the human mind works. So an analytical brain says, I've said it, so that's it, end of message. But when we look at other people on the receiving end, they might need a few times that same message, just not in the same way with the same words. So if you want to get a message across, you usually have to repeat it in a different way, using different words, using a different analogy, using different examples. Now, I had to learn that the hard way. I had to learn it because I couldn't walk anymore. That lasted circa 7 years before I could stand on 2 feet again. Prior to that time, it was 1 foot and a few toes. And I had to use crutches. Occasionally, I would be in a wheelchair. I used braces. And nowadays, fortunately, I can stand on 2 feet again, but I cannot walk long distances. And my crutches are always nearby, and so are my braces. The wheelchair is lent to someone else. And I've become very inventive. Now, the thing is, in order to get that one surgery I needed to be able to stand on 2 feet again, I have talked to so many surgeons, so many. And well, it took me 9 months for the first one to actually do surgery. He did have the surgery. And then it took me a lot of years going places, talking to people, talking to all different organizations before I found the one and only who could actually do it over here. And actually, she hadn't been trained by someone who I talked to, but was like, what are you doing here? I work in Spain. You cannot afford me. Bye. Oh yeah. And he said, you've got 2 problems. One we can't fix, and the other one, well, I don't know. She did. She was trained by this guy. She knew. She said, I'm not going to make any promises. And well, nowadays I can ride a bike again. So that's good. I can stand on 2 feet. I can walk some distances. But I also understand what she said, because a lot of damage has been done because I couldn't stand on 2 feet, which meant no working out, which meant using one leg more than the other one, which meant that the muscles went down in strength. The stability was haywire, so the whole coordination went haywire. Now, I know that I'm dealing with something which is called EDS. So there's Dr. Ehlers, there's Dr. Danlos, ED, and they came up with the EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is basically a fancy thing for hypermobility, but then a little bit more extreme. So basically my joints have a mind of their own. The cute thing is, it taught me to speak up and speak out, because I did not want to lose my freedom. Basically, especially in the beginning, I couldn't sit, I couldn't stand. The only thing I basically could do was lie down. I couldn't ride a bike back then either. And well, that was lack of freedom, because then it's pretty hard to go places. I did do it. I did go places, especially after the first surgery. But, riding a bike was still hard. And if it wasn't for my friends from the US, musicians, who came over, and me wanting to get training, I'm not sure what I would have done. But I'm inquisitive, I'm curious, hence change. And I was like, I'm just going to do it. So I went to England, I went to London, went to see Tony Robbins. I traveled through Europe, got stuck at the airport in Barcelona. I've seen and done it all. I've been traveling to the US for 6 weeks with 2 backpacks and my 2 crutches. I ended up next to what do you call it? A cactus? I think it's called the same thing. The big green thing in the desert with all the needles. And it was kind of cool. It was. And people don't know that in order to get there, I actually got some people from the golf court, from the hotel, from the resort where we were staying in, got training, actually brought me in the golf cart towards the path so I could use my 2 crutches and go up. And then someone else who was there too took a picture of me. And till this day, I'm so proud of that picture. I cannot tell you how much it means to me, but it does. So, yeah, I know about speaking up. And, well, the past couple of years, well, at first when I became a therapist, and I also was a massage therapist and I was coach, it was, as a therapist, you help people on the spot with things which are going on. As a coach, I would help people decide what they wanted in life and where to go from there, or what they wanted with their relationship or at work. And I have to say that was very fulfilling. Then at some point, health care insurance didn't pay anymore. So I did what I had to do. I had additional training, but at some point it just was over and done with. And so I said to some of my clients, we're not done yet. We need to keep on going. And so I was fortunate enough to guide some of my clients. And, for several hours a week, really help them to make sense of life. Some had problems with housing. Some had problems with school and university and work. Others had problems with the same housing and work. And it all had to do with being different when it came to communication. Others were housing and having to be a little bit careful not to be prone to addiction. I can tell you numerous stories of what people went through, but the common thing they all were dealing with was they were neurodivergent. So they didn't think like most people do. Guess what? I'm one of them. I didn't know it back then, but I did know, I did understand them, and I could talk for them. And what I've learned is that when you're very emotional, you don't pick up on the things that are being said to you. Well, you pick up on it partially, but there are some very important things that usually go. That's why it's important to prepare. When I go to those appointments with my clients, I prepare with them. We have a list. This is what needs to be discussed. This is why. This is what we want out of it. And, well, I'll let the person talk, the client. And when the client is not capable of talking on anymore because it's too emotional or because they forget, which also is part of being very emotional, then I'll take over. So usually those meetings work out very well. I take notes. On the other side of the table at the meeting, they do too. And we come to good understandings. Now, we're talking about employers, we're talking about people at school who guide students, we're talking about people from the municipality. We're talking about all walks of life, all kinds of professions. And what they need is to know, what does the person across me want? And I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about the client. Now, having done this for so many years, I can pretty much tell when I can actually help someone out. And I can see pretty quickly, hear, understand that they haven't been heard. There are some little clues. And I guess having coached for years on end, that really helps, because it gives you a very good understanding of what's going on. And also, with all the training that I've had, including the therapy, being a therapist, that actually has made me more sensitive. Now, taking into consideration that I'm already highly sensitive, then we have, I pick up on little clues. This week, when I had the recertification, there were some talks. And, there are a couple of things which make a coach good. Apart from being enthusiastic, it's about picking up on those little clues. And I mean the clues which are not sad. So it was kind of funny. I was an observer, and at some point there was a relatively new coach, and then there was a seasoned coach, which was the client. And I was like, you're avoiding the hard questions. So he would tell what he would have done or has done, but he wouldn't get into something new. And as coach, you want to work on what can be fixed now, not something that has been fixed in the past. It's nice that you talk about it, but what's the value? So little clues, which people do not pick up on. And then there's the other thing, which is getting people to think and to connect and getting to a place where you didn't expect to go. And well, there was another one. He was new, and she got me right there. And honestly, I know there was something she said, and I know I responded to it, and I first wanted to say that it wasn't true, and I had to confirm what she said. I actually did it in multiple ways. So I do hope that I can find her again in our mutual group on Facebook, because I'm so curious what it is she said. So I hope she still has the notes. So I do know what I felt, but like I said, part of the conversation is gone. What I do remember is that when the observer started talking, there, tears. I don't know if he saw it. I don't know if she saw it, but there were tears on my end. And of course, then 10 minutes later, I had to go for it again. I became the coach, and then all of a sudden, energy changes, and there we go. But what I learned from my own coach, and also during the training, was the sense of urgency to start changing things. So I've said for a long time now, I want to do trips. I want to take people on a coaching trip, and I want to work with people one-on-one, but also in a group coaching setting. And what the goal is that I want people to become aware of where they are stuck and how they can change it, how they can change their communication. And if we have a group of managers or business owners, we can go that one step further, because we can get them to talk about, but how are we going to change things in the business? So I don't need to tell them how to run their business, as in what their core business is and all that stuff. They know it best. That's not the discussion. But the thing is, when you don't feel that you're listened to, and especially if it not only happens with your employees, but also in your personal life. And yes, those things usually are something that you see in multiple areas. So if someone is not good at something, it's not only going to show up at work, it's also going to show up in your relationships. And what I want them is to become aware of their style of communication, what they are actually thinking and what they are actually telling themselves. So a lot of people who have been put down, starting with the parents and later with partners, they tell themselves it must be me. And it's a very subtle process. I'm not sure how it works, but I believe that predators, also known as lover boys, but in this case, we're also talking about ladies, they recognize that someone is not up for the task of standing up for themselves. Now, I'm not sure how they specifically recognize this, but then again, you can pretty quickly tell by the way someone is answering whether they're confident or if they're not. And here's the thing, usually when it comes to the business, they're pretty confident. But when it comes to personal life, that's a whole different story. And then, of course, the question becomes, when do they speak up? So if you only explain things once and then you assume that others know, well, then that's it. And I can tell you, the other person probably won't have caught up on it. But what if the other person might actually hear it, but is not interested in listening to you because they are only focused on what they want? So when we're talking about, for instance, narcissistic people, they are usually charmers. They know how to wrap you around their little fingers, if they're little fingers. And so they charm their way into your life until you're hooked. So they make it exciting. They do things that other people probably haven't done prior to meeting this person. So it's sort of like wish come true until, and that's it. And then they start to change and they start to demand and they don't give back. The only time they give back is when you get so upset that you say, I'm done. And then they turn around, do their little dance, make your head spin again, and there you go. In the meanwhile, what they're doing is they're taking everyone away from you. So it starts with, I want to join your friends. Or it starts with, I don't want to see your friends. I want to be with you and I want you to spend time with me. And then there likely will be some complaints about the family. Your family doesn't like me. Let's stay at home. And sometimes it goes even to such a length that work is influenced. So they might show up at work, or they might call and say, hey, I want you to drop by right now. But whatever it is, they make it impossible for you to do your work normally. So they take basically everything away, which is normal, people you can talk to, and then all of a sudden you're alone with this person. Now imagine that you are a business owner and you are becoming more and more unhappy at your in your own private life. So when you go out, it's awesome if it's awesome. So at times it's awesome, and other times it's like you feel not heard, not understood, and what are you going to do? And a lot of people, so they start using substances. Younger people usually start cutting themselves, and depending on whether you're a man or a woman, I think there's a difference with who is going to drink and who's going to use different substances. Regardless, it's about trying to numb yourself. Hey, do you recognize that? I help people who do not know how to speak up and speak out. As a result, start to numb themselves, don't see any perspective anymore. And that's when I help them out and make the change happen for them by speaking out for them and then later on teaching them how to do it themselves. Now, having said so, if you're an employee, it's hard enough. And the question, of course, is, do you keep on working? Or at some point, are you totally isolated at your own place or at the other person's place? Depression, anxiety, all those kind of things. And sometimes it ends well, and sometimes it's not the way we want it to end. But getting back, say you're a business owner, you have responsibilities. So the good news is they have something to focus on. There's always an excuse of work. I'm going to work. And that keeps their mind occupied. But if they have that same problem of not being able to communicate, so to get across what it is they want and need and why, because they're like, I've told you once, so you need to know, then what's going to happen? The other one doesn't pick up on it. So your staff doesn't pick up on it. So you have a staff of people who are good at what they are hired to do, but they suck at a lot of other things they need to do as well, especially when we're talking about a small company. So they might be good, say that it's IT, they might really be good at programming and solving problems, but they cannot talk to the client. Whenever they talk to a customer, it's, they're impolite or they're very short, and the customer is like, what? Or they don't write down the hours that they've spent because they want to help the customer out. So that's the exact opposite. Whatever it is that needs to be done, you as the business owner writing the invoices, because you can tell how much money is coming in and you can see how much hours your employees have worked. You just don't know what they have worked on, because small businesses, they need to be quite self-supporting. And that's exactly where the problem is. When there is a big amount of self-supporting and being able to do things on your own is required, then of course the question is, but do they know everything that's involved? And usually people are good at some things, but not the other ones. So at some point, when they find a refuge in something else and they're not happy with what's going on in their own business, they might skip a few days because they're not feeling too well, because, well, they wanted not to feel. So they had a little bit too much to drink or to, pop a pill. And they can't function at that moment. And, well, then the chaos in the business becomes even worse. Now, if I can help those business owners, preferably before they come to that place, but let's say they do come to that place, but again, preferably before. But I have helped people who are already were in that situation. And you can talk about them like, hey, what's going on in life? Are you happy with life? What's going on with your spouse? What are you actually telling yourself? Oh, it must be me all the time? Really? When people start saying, it must be me all the time, you can count on it, that it's been imprinted, that it's been repeated over and over and over and over again. And the thing is, just like a potential spouse or partner, this is life. So I cannot just stop the recording and then continue on. So just bear with me for a sec. My throat is really tickling and itching at the moment. So let's see if this works. So if one person involved in your life already knows, say it's a previous partner or it's your current partner, and let's say it's your previous partner, and then the current partner does it too, and then you have children, teenage children, and they do it too. So you see where I'm going? Because the same thing, which is about communication, which is something they haven't learned, or they have been put down whenever they wanted to say something by their parents, for instance, well, they're not going to be any happier, and they are going to get in this repetitive cycle. It's happening over and over and over and over again. And of course, as a result, they're spiraling down. Must be me, must be me. See, no one wants me, no one needs me. They're all upset with me, and they all say it's you. What I've learned in this week, well, actually, in the previous week, was a big thank you to my regular coach, is that I really want to get those trips out there. The only difference is I do not just want to do trips for the sake of sightseeing. I specifically want those business owners in there from small businesses. First, I always said business owners and managers. And now I'm like, well, no, probably small businesses. Precisely because they don't have anyone in place like an HR department. So if they don't feel like they have enough people working for them to actually have someone on the side who helps out with the communication, then what we need to do is we need to teach them how to communicate themselves better. And of course, we can coach them on it. And that's one of the things that I want to do. Now, if I can have a number of like-minded people, then it becomes interesting, because then they can coach one another in a group coaching session. And I'm there to guide the whole thing. Now, that's one of the things that I've been wanting to do for decades. I just didn't know it was like this. What I wanted was to have those people think differently and see the employee for who they were and actually communicate, because I've been on the receiving end so many times. But now I'm in a position where I can change things. And then we get back to what actually happened last year, in combination with all those healthcare regulation where, well, where they didn't want to pay for the client anymore, or the patient in this case, so the healthcare only organizations. We're talking about me being done with everybody telling me how to do it and what to do. And basically also just wanting to travel and do things online instead of having people come over. And now I'm here. I'm like, I know what I want. I'm thrown. It feels like everything around me is sort of, there's a disconnect to the past, because I stopped doing what I did because it didn't work anymore. I couldn't do it anymore physically, and I couldn't do it anymore because, well, the health insurance companies didn't want to pay for it anymore. Then, so everything changed. And I think I'm now at this point where I need to push through. So when Brendan started talking about chaos, how to manage chaos and how to deal with change, I had no clue that I would be telling you today about this, what's going on right now. And I've been constantly wondering, what is it? What's happening? What is the universe trying to tell me? And again, it doesn't literally have to be the universe. but there's a message in there. I do believe that whenever we get across something, we can learn from it. And whether there's some guidance in there or if it's just coincidence, I'm not going to argue with you about that. Um, there's something, you know, no, I'm not going to go into that. Let's stick to that one. I think that's the best thing to do. But again, I do believe that we can learn from all the challenges. And well, I basically see this as challenge. So when my parents died, and specifically when my mom passed on, she was the last one of the two. At some point, the house got sold, and there's a bunch of their stuff here too. So there's a disconnect. Then there's storage of stuff from them, and then there's me, who all of a sudden is, well, I'm confronted with this situation where I need things from the past and I have no clue where to find it. I thought I was organized. I thought I knew where it was. And I probably took specifically those diplomas here because other people demanded it from me, like professional organizations. And well, when I stopped working with them, it just, you know, there was no need for it anymore. I talk to my clients on the phone. I do it on Zoom. The local ones I go visit. So no one has to come here. And everything nowadays is stored in my phone. So the current diplomas and all that stuff and all current certifications are all in my phone. Long live iCloud storage. And that's why I say I don't know if I scanned the old document. So it must be in the old file somewhere related to when I still use Windows. So I need to ask other people. But I do know that when it comes to change, the chaos is there for a reason. The chaos is telling me something like, hey, you said you wanted to change. Now, when are you going to do it? So the last couple of months, I have started posting on LinkedIn. So actually this live is also on LinkedIn. And I never felt like connecting on LinkedIn apart from my former colleagues because that was my IT past. And it wasn't until I talked to my brother a few times recently that I realized that there finally is, well, they realized that they need to do something with people who are neurodivergent, and they need to do something with people who have lost faith and trust in the company and who are supposed to cooperate with other people, whether in projects or normally, but they are already so beaten up by the system. You know, those managers, team leaders who said, yeah, we're going to do this, and then reorganization. Well, we don't know if you're going to stay. Then lack of people, too much work. Well, you figure it out how you're going to do it. And then, of course, there was COVID. So it's not really weird that a lot of people are there to do their own job because that's hard enough with too little time. They never get it finished, and then they have to make time to actually work on a different project, really. So the good news is that there are strategies out now which talk about, okay, how can you change it? Sort of like a business coach. So when I was talking to my brother, I said, but wouldn't it help if you know why do people react the way they do? I said, you don't have to go digging into their past. I said, but it's often just a few clues. If you spend like an hour on it, then you already get the answers from the people and they feel heard. And At the end of the previous century, I gave training, and it was about a framework. But what I basically did was listen to the people. I talked to them. What's going on? So I would do surveys, and I would get those answers back. Now, what's so cool is when you talk to Brandon Burchard or he talks to us, the first thing he says is, when you are a speaker or a trainer, it's not about you. It's about your audience. So figure out who your audience is, what it is they want. Don't repeat your own story again and again and again with no different outcome, but adjust the story to what it is they need to hear. It was like, yeah, that makes sense. And when it comes to training and to coaching people to make a difference, I mean, I can do it one-on-one with people. And then, so one person, one individual changes, their spouse probably change, their children probably change. Something at least happens. So hopefully it's for the better, but something happens, something shifts. And of course, that has its effect on future generations too. But what if we could pull it a little bit broader and bigger and start with someone in the company who influences his or her employees? And then from there on, each employee, but also the business owner, have their partners. They might have children, and then so on, friends, you know. I mean, the ripple effect is so much bigger. And that's what I got to realize this week. Like, okay, I really need to work on this. So I guess every week there's a piece of the puzzle, the missing piece of the puzzle, making things more specific, giving more clarity. But now, of course, there's the urgency to get it done. And well, then we get back to the change. So I know what I want, but do I dare to do it? So I was wondering when I was going to start this live how much I was going to share with you. And then I was like, well, I actually know where I want to go and I know what I want to share. And well, I'm proud of myself that I did it, that I shared about the change, about the chaos, and also about what I want to leave as a legacy and how I see that's possible. Which leads me to the following question. Are you one of those people who is running a team, who has a small business, and you are stuck? Or do you have experience with it and you would just like to brainstorm with me on a live about it so other people can learn from it? Then please get in touch with me. And the sooner we can get people happier in organizations, but also in their personal life, the better. We don't want people to opt out. We don't want people to turn to substances they shouldn't use. It would be nice to actually have the time and the space and be able to share the respect that someone else deserves and not gets, because they're a little different. So it's time to speak up and to speak out. Share your story, share your why. Don't be shy about it. Dare to repeat it, do it with more clarity. And on the other hand, if you're on the receiving end, don't dismiss someone because they are quiet or it comes across a little bit strange and you don't actually know what to do with it. But ask on. Get that communication going. That's a huge start for change. Are you ready for it? Want to see more Friday Night Lives? Then go there. Yes, go there, click on there, and you'll see more episodes.